Everyone, welcome to Pass the Rock, late March 2024. So much to talk about. This is your home from Lost Tribe for sports. So we have today some March Madness, we have some NBA, maybe we get into what a drop tackle is in the NFL, and then we have a little MLB. This is where you do it. Thanks for everyone for hanging out with us with our MLB The Show streams over the weekend. Now you're a full-fledged member, so enjoy a show. This is Pass the Rock.
What do y'all pass the gosh darn rock? Hey yo, I'm trying, I ain't lying, and hosting this will be Brian. Posting like Kobe Bryant, flying to see the pie. Hit the hezzy, we got Jesse, opinions get kinda messy. A fan of out of lefties, from football to racing jet skis. He go silly when he go deep, sheesh, is Zach Zeman. Teaming up with Jack, we stack the whole team, man. Pass the rock, don't stop the shot clock. Smack the slap shot, come on, now let's talk. Pass the, yo partner, pass the rock, for real.
So Jack isn't with us because he's on spring break. Zach missed last week or the week before spring break. Guess what Jesse and I don't do? Take a day off. Jesse, how you doing?
I'm doing great, and lots of hard work over the last few days, especially during the round of 64 and 32. I was locked in at my desk all day, really, really grinding. So keeping an eye out for any highlights that are worth posting, and just doing my job, doing my due diligence.
Yeah, free views right there, baby. Posting some March Madness highlights. What about you, Zach?
Hey, I missed last week because of spring break, but we're back. We're ready to get back into it. And I'd like to go on the record. I know we're going to be talking a lot about March Madness. Let's not forget, Samford got hosed.
The Samford
got hosed, and Zach is bringing that. Zach's like, everybody, you go down to the Gulf Coast. Do whatever you need to do for spring break. I'm bringing back # Cleveland spring break. That's what I'm all about, and I just want to applaud you for that.
Yeah.
No, Cleveland was it was Cleveland, so made the most out of that.
All right, Jesse, how bad do you need a March Madness second chance bracket?
Oh, pretty bad. I started out pretty hot on day one, just like everybody else, and then pretty much everything fell apart in the round of 32. Had some upsets that didn't go the way, and then had some favorites that didn't go our way either. So I'm in dire need of a second chance bracket, and you can bet that I have UConn over Creighton in the final. So Creighton, I know they had a close game in overtime. That game had me on the edge of my seat, but it's going to be a good one. And UConn just looks so good. I'm definitely riding with them the rest of the way through after the first two. So second chance, I definitely needed it, and I'm glad that I have it.
Yeah, let me just say my bracket fell apart, the one I have in the Lost Tribe bracket challenge, because of the Fighting Bruce Pearls losing on day one. I can't, you can't lose to Yale. I'm sorry. It's just inexcusable. And, I got to get him on the horn and find out what's going on. Although I'm going to wait a few weeks because I'm sure he's about 1,000 times more pissed than I am about it. So what about you, Zach? Do you need a second chance bracket?
Definitely could use a second chance bracket, but I'm not sweating it too much. My original two national champion contender picks are still in the tournament. I have Arizona going over Creighton. I've had Arizona going over Creighton. I made one bracket. I'm just riding the bracket. Look, it's only 36% accurate. It's already been busted to God knows where. But if the national champion still pulls through, it'll look pretty good at the end of the day. So we'll see.
Did you say it's 36% accurate? That seems low to me.
36% accurate because I chose certain upsets that would prevent teams like UConn from going far or stuff like that. So look, as long as it ends up being Arizona Creighton, I'm going to say I did a fine job this year. I'm not too worried. I'm not going to get myself worked up with second, third chance brackets that come down the line. Be like, I'm going to get it this time. At this point, it's significantly easier to get it. There's really no glory in a second chance bracket, in my opinion.
Well, I have a big argument to that, and Jesse's going to fight it for me. Jesse, what are we doing about a second chance bracket?
We're hosting one. We're giving people another chance to get in the money. So $100 to the winner of our second chance bracket. And you can act like you had the first two rounds all correct, and now you just have the Sweet 16 left to go. And it's something that's actually feasible. And, that we do our bracket challenge every year that's actually impossible. Like, statistically, nobody's ever done it. But I think a second chance bracket, only 16 games, and you kind of weeded out a lot of the wild cards so far. So I think there's more of a chance that you can actually get that perfect bracket. And I can't wait to see the entries. We already got 15 or 20 people joined for the second chance bracket. So make sure you go fill it out. However, I will say in my second chance bracket, I have Gonzaga over Purdue. So I think the Zags are going to zag. And I think the Boilermakers are going to boil down and lose that game. So
Exactly. Okay, let's get to it then. So you can check out in the chat right now. There's a link to that bracket. I'll throw it in the show notes for this episode, and it's all over our Discord. So check that out.
It's in our link tree as well. If you go to the link in any bio on our pages, it's the top link.
There you go. Perfect. So Zach, is anyone stopping UConn at this point?
Well, before we really get into what UConn, their road ahead, let's just be honest. Their path so far has not been very difficult. They beat a 16 seed to a pulp, and they beat 9-seeded Northwestern pretty handily. Like, two very easy games for an extremely strong UConn team. We haven't really seen them, at their full might against a heavy hitter. But at the same time, I think there's no one left in their region to stop them. If we're going to get someone that's going to be able to stop them, we have to look outside of their region. Like I said earlier, I do like Arizona in this tournament. I like North Carolina in this tournament. If Purdue actually gets their stuff together, maybe they could defeat them late in the tournament, talking national championship at that point. Creighton and Tennessee facing off against each other kind of sucks because those are two teams that I think would have a decent shot against UConn, but the winner of that game could knock them off in the national championship. And finally, I mean, Houston with their lockdown defense, always like Houston, but the offense, of course, it's like, they have it all together this year, but defense is their main strength. Will their offense be able to keep up? We'll have to see. But those are the teams I like having a good shot against UConn this year. But right now, it is UConn's to lose. It's UConn's tournament to lose. They can go back-to-back. We just got to see it.
So, Jesse, Mike Greenberg on ESPN said that UConn deserves the 10 spot in the East play-in tournament. What do you think?
I mean, they'd have to compete with Zach's Sixers, and then the Bulls and the Hawks are right there. I mean, with the current state and the Heat, the Heat are 7th, but with the current state of those rosters, I mean, the Hawks have been pretty decimated with injuries. No Trae Young, Clint Capella's been out for a bit, and DeAndre Hunter and Okongwu have been out. But I still don't think so. I mean, at the end of the day, this is still a college team, and no matter what, the Pistons will give the UConn Huskies the business. So I don't think that there's ever any validity to saying, oh, the best team in college could beat the worst team in the NBA, because there's just no way. But, good for Mike Greenberg.
They used to, in the 60s, the NFL used to have like the Super Bowl champion play the college all-star team or whatever. I can't, obviously we'll never see that again.
What would be cool is if maybe the worst team in the NBA has to face the team who wins the national championship and face relegation if they lose that game. And if they lose, that team is now up for relocation. And whichever team loses now goes to like Seattle or Las Vegas. And then the next year, the next worst team goes up for relocation if they lose to the national champion.
Just have the G League champion play the worst team in the NBA, and
instead of the G League Ignite, now they could just have a whole team of NBA level talent if they lose to a college team.
That's right. All right. So one of the things I noticed when I was filling out my second chance bracket is there's not a ton of teams outside of the 1 to 4 seeds in each region. So there's only 4: NC State, Clemson, San Diego State, and Gonzaga. The only ones that are a 5 seed or worse. Which one has the best chance to make some noise, Jesse?
Ooh, okay. So let me look at the bracket real quick. So of every team that is currently above a 5 seed that has the best chance, this might sound chalk, but I'm going to go with Gonzaga. I think the Bulldogs have been here. They are a 5 seed going up against number 1 Purdue, and I think that they are going to be the ones to spoil Purdue's run and move on. And then they get Creighton or Tennessee, which will be tough, but not as tough as, they already took down 1 seed, and then they get to go to the 2 or 3. So I'm going to say Gonzaga, I think, has the best chance outside of the top 4 seeded teams to make a run.
Yeah, and let's remember, San Diego State made it to the Final Four last year. The only problem for them is they have UConn staring at them in the next round. Zach, your thoughts on that?
So while I do like the idea of Gonzaga, I want to shout out 2 other teams. I like Clemson. Clemson's doing a lot more than people expected in this tournament. They faced against Arizona And while I do have Arizona winning the entire thing in my own bracket, it's not to say that they can't be beaten. I think Clemson matches up fairly well against them. And then for just a lower seed pick, the lowest of seeds left, NC State has a good chance to upset Marquette, I believe. NC State's had a very good tournament run. They defeated, number 6 Texas Tech. They defeated Oakland with the upset victory, but that was also a really close game. Oakland had a great game plan going against Kentucky. They had a great game plan going against NC State, and NC State was able to overcome that. Meanwhile, you have a Marquette team who has defeated a 16 seed and a 10 seed, and the Buffs gave them a lot of trouble in the second round. I think NC State could really pose this Marquette team with a big challenge. I think this NC State team is a team that I thought would make a deep run in this tournament. They're proving me correct. I think they can get to the Elite Eight, beating Marquette.
Well, and if you believe in any sort of momentum from the conference championships or conference tournaments, they did that. They won the ACC tournament. So
they arguably have the most momentum of any team in this tournament. They came out of nowhere to win their conference tournament, and now they've won every game since. And I mean, I think I saw the Barstool NC State account being like, at one point they tweeted 11 more wins straight and we win the national championship. Then it was like, now it's 4 more wins until the national championship. Now it's a lot more realistic for NC State to make this deep of a run. I think they keep the momentum into the Elite Eight. After that, it's going to start to get really difficult, but I think they can win this game. I think they can beat Marquette.
Yeah, then they're probably staring at Houston if they get through. So
that's where it gets tough.
Yeah. It gets real tough real quick. But all 4 number 1s still alive, many of the number 2s. So exciting tournament playing out. We got the second half of the women's round of 32 tonight for them to get to 16. LSU already punched its ticket through. South Carolina. We got Iowa tonight. Caitlin Clark's last game in Iowa City.
Clark's last game against the West Virginia Mountaineers. I'm very excited for the best player in college basketball to lock up Caitlin Clark. JJ Quinterly, remember the name. Tonight she's going to be on a big stage.
How big of a underdog are they?
I don't know. I actually haven't checked the odds, but I mean, hey, never tell me the odds. Doesn't matter.
Is she related to Javon Quinterly?
Who's Javon Quinterly?
Javon Quinterly was in the NBA. He's not in the NBA. He's on the Memphis Tigers now, but he was part of the original Jelly Fam movement and was very popular, like him and Naz Reid and all those guys. So he bounced around. He was a very high prospect, but I was wondering if they're related.
I feel like I would know that if they were related, so I'm not sure. Maybe I'll have to look into that later.
Yeah, it is. I think they are.
But speaking of Javon's in college ball, Quinterly plays a lot like former West Virginia stud Javon Carter. So if you need a little comp there, that's your comp. Very excited to see how tonight's matchup plays out. You pretty much have the unstoppable offense versus the impenetrable defense in this matchup. So I'm very excited to see how it plays out.
Yeah, well, there's going to be a couple logo shots from Caitlin, I think. And
yeah, I'm scared about that.
We can't really defend that. So, all right, let's get to the NBA. A little contender or pretender. All right. So we have about 10 to 12 games left for each team in the NBA. So it's crunch time. You got to be, pulling into that 6 seed or better if you want to make sure you get a playoff spot, or maybe break into the 7, 8, 9, 10 if you're lower to get to play in. So the Pacers on a bit of a decline. The problem is when you play no defense, it's really hard to keep up. Can the Pacers avoid the play-in with such a lack of defense, Jesse?
I don't think so. They gave up 150 points to the Los Angeles Lakers last night in regulation. Yes, they scored 145, but they allowed 150 points. I'm honestly shocked that the Lakers allowed that much just because of how good their defense has been. And AD and LeBron both played. But, I mean, this is just ridiculous. They allowed 42 points in the second quarter and 44 points in the third quarter. You can't be allowing 86 points in 2 quarters of basketball. It's unacceptable, and there's no way that they're going to do anything significant in this year's playoffs if they keep playing like this. Tyrese Halliburton, I don't know what he did at his party at All-Star Weekend, but he partied a little too hard because he has been in a pretty bad slump since the All-Star break. I think he's shooting very low percentages, a lot lower than the first half of the year. So he's having that post All-Star slump, and honestly, it seems like, the rose-colored glasses have come off on the Pacers. Like, they were this hot team that we thought was actually going to make some noise when they were, I believe, 4th in the East for a while. And now they've kind of regressed back to the 6th, 7th, and maybe even lower than that if they keep losing.
Yeah.
So it's not looking good for the Pacers. And I think with their current state of defense, it's just not going to work. I mean, Miles Turner is a great defensive player, and Pascal Siakam is pretty good on the defensive end too. But it's just their guards and their wings outside of Siakam and whatever. It's not. They don't have the defensive presence that they need. And there's no way that you can allow 150 points to like the 10th seed in the West and call yourself a contender.
Mm-hmm. I don't think.
Yeah, I mean they're closer. They're closer to being the 8th seed than they are to being the 5 seed. So they're only a half game up on 7 and 8, and so one more loss and they could be staring down at that. So Zach, can the Pacers save this?
I think. I mean, the Pacers. The hardest thing about the saving the way the Pacers play, like this is just their play style. Their play style is to score 125 points per night and then see if the other team is able to keep up with them. Here's the issue. Teams have figured this out and they're beating them at their own play style. They're beating them at their own game. We had the Lakers loss last night where the Lakers up to 150. They lost to the Bulls on March 13th, 132 to 129. The Bulls were able to adapt and play their style of basketball. You could argue that, even the Spurs were able to adapt. They scored 117 on the Pacers. The Spurs, a notoriously bad offensive team. The Pelicans dropped 129 on them on March 1st. The Raptors dropped 130 on them on February 20th.
That's a story.
Like these aren't necessarily teams that are great offensively, but they're getting around 125 points. The Warriors on February 8th dropped 131 on the Pacers. Like these are teams that are either making it way closer than it should be or blowing them out at their own style of play. And this is becoming more and more of a trend. If this continues for the Pacers, they won't be able to do anything in the playoffs when teams are able to adapt to that play style even quicker and are even more focused on this. You get to see the same team at least 4 times. They're going to adapt and they're going to beat you at your own game.
I take offense that you put the Pelicans in that group. We have the 2nd best net rating since the All-Star break.
I'm not
Thank
saying
you very much.
No, I'm just reading off the wins I'm just reading off the Pacers losses that come against teams scoring in the manner that the Pacers like to score. It's not about who's good or who's bad at offense. It's the fact that it could be any team, any night that adapts to the style of their play, whether it be the lowly Lakers, the really good Pelicans, or even the absolutely trash Bulls. Any team is able to adapt to the Pacer style of play. And if they're able to outscore the Pacers, that's it. That's the goal of the game. Drop as many points as possible.
Yeah, they're still playing all-star defense. That's the problem with the Pacers. So, all right, Zach, back to you. Can Joel Embiid of the Sixers? Now, remember, the Sixers are one of those teams a half game back of the Pacers. Can Joel Embiid save the season for the 76ers, get them into the playoffs?
If Embiid's able to come back within the next few weeks, I think, especially if he's back in the play-in, they're going to make it through the play-in. The Sixers with Embiid are obviously a top 6 team in the East, I would say. But it's really tough. It all depends on how he comes back, at what capacity he's able to play. If we get an 80% Joel Embiid, I think they make the playoffs. I think they're absolutely fine. They can compete in a series with Milwaukee or Boston. They don't win that series. But let's be honest. If Embiid comes back or not, it doesn't look like the Sixers are contenders this year. I could admit that. It looks like this is not going to be their year. They need a good offseason to refresh, bring out a team that probably doesn't have Tobias Harris and has more help for Embiid. I don't think the Sixers are contenders this year.
So you're saying they are the same as last year when they weren't contenders as well?
Yeah, pretty much. Eternal
All
pain.
right, contender or pretender? The New York Knicks. So Jesse, this one's for you. OG and Brunson are healthy. If they can get Randall back, what is the ceiling for this Knicks team?
I actually think that this team is a contender. I think that they have as good of a shot when healthy as any other team in the Eastern Conference outside of the Celtics. Like, I think that the Celtics are the clear number 1, And then after that, it's really kind of preference on if you like the Bucks, Cavs, Knicks. I think those are the top three who are really competing. But the Knicks, I have a lot of New York Knicks in fantasy basketball this year, so I've paid a lot of attention to them. Jalen Brunson is playing great basketball. Josh Hart is playing great basketball, and he's been. I think Josh Hart has been one of the most like solid and reliable players in all of basketball this year. He played 48 minutes every single minute last week. He was the only player in the league to have done so until 2 nights later. Miles McBride, also on the Knicks, played 48 minutes. So they're not running very deep right now. But also Dante DiVincenzo has been playing great this season as well. I mean, the Nova boys are just balling out in New York. They've also got the depth pieces of Bogdanovich and Burke. So, I mean, I think that this team is deep. They are star-studded where it matters. They've been playing really well, great defensively. I think they held the Sixers, I think, to like 75 or 80 points last week, like one of the lowest scoring games of the season. They held a lot of opponents lately to under 100 points, the complete opposite of what the Pacers are doing. So I think that this team is a defensive-minded team that can score, that has the guys who can hit the big shots. So I think that their ceiling is at least the Eastern Conference Final. And if they can get lucky and somebody else can bounce Boston, or they just can wait until the Eastern Conference Final to face Boston, I think that they have a very good chance. And honestly, I would be surprised if the Knicks exit in rounds 1 or 2 of this year's playoffs, and especially if they get their guy Julius Randle back in a few weeks.
Well, at their current spot, they would have to play the Celtics in round 2. So, but you're saying Knicks and Bucks match up in round 2. The Knicks win that series.
See, it depends if they have Randall, because I don't know who on the Knicks is guarding Giannis. It might not be able to be Julius Randle anyway.
It's not Randall,
but he at least helps to have another bigger body, because the Knicks, the one place that they are a bit shallow is center. With Isaiah Hartenstein's had a good year, and Mitchell Robinson is good, but he hasn't been healthy, and it's a tough situation. And if Isaiah Hartenstein has to guard Brook Lopez, then I don't know who you put on Giannis. And if it's Julius Randle, that could get ugly. But I do think that this team has killers, and I think that they could definitely take the Bucks pretty late into a series. And I think that it would at least go 6, maybe 7. But I just think the Knicks have played really, really great basketball this year. And I think that the Bucks haven't. And I think that the Knicks are much better coached. Tom Thibodeau, say what you want about him running his players into the ground, but he's a great coach. He was coach of the year, I think, a year or 2 ago with this Knicks team, and he's been great. And I don't think that Glenn Rivers has what it takes in the series. I would trust Giannis and Dame over Brunson and Randall, but there is the coaching staff in the mix there too.
Yeah, I think if you're the Knicks in that series, you almost have to take out everybody else and just make Giannis beat you alone. Not that he can absolutely do it.
Yeah,
but their defense, the Bucks defense has been better lately, but it's not unbelievable. And look, I love Josh Hart. He's the gluiest of glue guys that they have in the NBA, not just on the Knicks. So, Zach, quick thoughts on the Knicks and what their ceiling is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of agree with Jesse on this. I mean, the Knicks, I like what they're doing. I really like how they're coached. I really like how they play really hard offense and defense. But I mean, just look at the rosters, the Celtics and Bucks. It's hard to pick them over either of those teams. I really like what Jesse said, though. Ceiling, that matchup in the second round will be really tough against either of those teams. I mean, most likely, what would it be? Most likely the Celtics. I mean, it's a tough road. The East is it's top heavy, and I don't think they're ready to compete with them just yet. But give it a few years, give it a few players leaving, swapping teams. Knicks could find themselves on top in a year or 2.
I just want to say real quick, so the current injury status, Julius Randle is progressing but has yet to do full contact. Mitchell Robinson is also progressing, but his timeline for return is still unknown. He's been out since December 8th. And OG Anunoby actually came back after his 18-game absence, but then aggravated his elbow, and then as a precaution has sat out the last 2 games, and I think is also out tonight. So he was kind of healthy, but not fully. So I would say this does hinge of if they get OG, Mitch, and Randall back, that's 3 starters for this team, and they've been playing that good without them. So if they do get those 3 pieces back by April 20th in the next month, I think that completely changes the whole story here.
Yeah. This next one feels weird to say. Contender or pretender? Golden State Warriors. So, Zach, how worried are you if you're a Warriors fan with the Rockets right on your tail with 10 games to go?
I'm definitely a bit worried because the Rockets have found their momentum. They're at 500 right now, but they're 9-1 in their last 10 games. They're on a roll for sure. And I mean, they do have a bit of a tough schedule, but you do have a head-to-head matchup on April 4th against the Rockets. If you're the Warriors, that's a head-to-head matchup. And I mean, it's not like the Rockets have a cupcake schedule to end the season as well. I mean, in their last 8 games, they're facing the Timberwolves, the Heat, the Mavericks, the Magic, and the Clippers. That's a majority of their opponents right there. That's a really tough way to end the season. I'm not sure what the Warriors' end of the season looks like. Let's see what their end of season is. They're facing the Mavericks twice, the Jazz twice, the Lakers, Blazers, Pelicans, and the Rockets, of course. It's not like either team really has an easy path to the end of the season, but I mean, it's going to come down to the wire. That head-to-head matchup's really going to matter at the end of the day. That could, I don't know what their season record is against each other, but that could be a tiebreaker when it comes to play-in time. I'm not sure. I'm definitely nervous if I'm a Warriors fan, but you still have 1 game on them. You have a little bit of wiggle room, and you have that head-to-head matchup. I'd be cautiously optimistic if I was a Warriors fan.
Okay. Jesse, over to you. The Rockets right at 500 right now. Do they have the brightest future in the NBA, maybe outside of OKC?
I think that they do. I think that the fact that they're playing this well, I know that they haven't played a lot of great teams lately. Like, yes, they've won like 10 of their last 11 or 9. They're 9-1 their last 10. But looking at the teams that they've actually played in those games, not to discredit the streak that they've been on, and Jalen Green's been balling lately, but those wins, only really 2 of those wins were three of them were against teams that are in any playoff contention. So they beat the Suns, then the Spurs, Blazers, Wizards, Spurs again, the Kings, the Cavs, but the Cavs didn't have Donovan Mitchell in that game as well, and then the Wizards again, and the Bulls and the Jazz. So all of those teams have a worse record than them, except for the Cavs, Suns, and Kings. So while yes, it is an impressive win streak, and they are hot right now, I don't think that they've been like beating any seriously good teams that should give you much worry about what the Rockets will actually do come playoff time this year. But I will say they have so much young talent. It's just all over the roster. I don't think anybody on that team is over 25. Just the fact that they're playing this well, and they have Alperen Şengün, who I think is the brightest young star center in the league. And then you have Amen Thompson, who is a top 5 pick from this year, who's kind of starting to really find his groove. Jalen Green, who's been playing like the best scorer in the league the last 2 weeks. Not to mention Jabari Smith, Tari Eason, and however many other, former lottery picks they have on that team. So there's just a lot of talent everywhere. They've got Fred VanVleet as their kind of vet to mentor those guys for the next 2 or 3 seasons while he's on the books. And then you get rid of him. You can give all those young guys some big contracts. So I think they've got a very bright future. It's just about seeing how this team can really mesh going forward. I think if Jalen Green can become a little bit more of a playmaker, then his ceiling will just go through the roof. Like if he can get to a Trae Young level of still giving you 27 points a game, but also 8, 9, 10 assists, like he's at like 3 or 4 assists right now. If he can really bump that number up, I think the sky's the limit for this team in like 2 or 3 years. But I will say for the Warriors, they should be worried because they're not playing well right now. It's so weird. They beat the Bucks by 30, and then the next night they lose to the Spurs. Like it's impossible to get a gauge on this team because they're either playing at full strength or like no strength. Curry's been in and out, and it's just really hard to get a gauge on how competitive this team really is. So I will say, finishing off the season, they get a couple gimme games here. Like they face Charlotte, San Antonio, Portland, not New Orleans, Utah again. There's some easy games in there that they have to win, and they can't do this dilly-dallying of beating the good teams and losing to the bad teams. It's like they're like the Bills of the NBA. It's like they can't afford to lose to those bad teams.
Yeah, and I mean, you can almost tell in the first 5 minutes if Steph's on, they're probably going to win. If he's not, they're probably not going to win. And then the Rockets really made their run once Şengün went out with injury. So
it's weird. Ever since Şengün went down, I think they've won almost every single game, which is just weird because he's their best player.
I mean, hey, kind of similar to the Knicks missing Julius Randle and Mitchell Robinson. Those are two guys that I thought would be make a bigger impact on those Knicks teams. They've been able to adapt. Hartenstein's really stepped up, and I mean, hey, they're on a roll too.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, because the Twitter sharks are out. They smell blood in the water with Şengün being out, and be like, what about a trade this year? What about my team trading for Şengün? Everybody's, I guess, low rent Jokic at this point. So, all right, this one's for you, Zach. Contender or pretender? LA Clippers. All right, they're sliding a bit. Okay, they're only a half game up on the Pelicans for the 4th spot in the West. Do you think that anyone is scared of them anymore?
I don't think they're as scared as they were. I mean, I still feel like this team at full strength does contend in the West, but I don't think they make it out of the West. There's just a few teams that I think are just better than them like this year. I'm picking the Nuggets over them. I'm picking the Thunder over them. I'm picking the Timberwolves over them. I'm like 50-50 with them and the Pelicans. I'm probably putting the Suns over them, and I'm probably putting the Mavericks over them, but although I think that one would be close. The main issue right now is that we're just not seeing what this Clippers team, what we know they can do. Plus, losing Russell Westbrook for a little bit of time does hurt. Just right at the end of the season, it's like, oh, you lose like your 6th man off the bench. Like that kind of hurts how we feel about them as well. I think they'll definitely make some noise in the playoffs, but I don't think they're a contender this year.
Jesse, any thoughts on the Clippers?
It's tough because 2 weeks ago, I thought that they were the scariest team in the West. And then since then, they've kind of been sliding and have been not as scary. And I mean, I know that they've had like a couple injuries and they might just be comfortable making the playoffs at this point and like kind of shutting down where, they're not going to give it all their 110% every single night and just kind of coast into the playoffs. Because I think this Clippers team, their philosophy is, we might not win every night, but you will not beat us 4 times out of 7. And I think that at this point, they just want to get to the playoffs and then prove that. So I'm still pretty scared of this team. I think that I would be more scared to play the Clippers than the Thunder and the Timberwolves at this point still, just because of all the guys on those teams. I know that they have a better record, but when it comes down to it, I mean, I know the Clippers haven't proven anything ever, but when it comes down to it, if I have a game on the line, I would take the team that has James Harden, Kawhi, and Paul George over a team that has, Shea, Chet, Jalen Williams, all those young guys, even though they've been playing great and they have a better record by like 2 or 3 wins now. Come playoff time, I'm taking the guys who have been here, who have been in those moments. And even though the Clippers haven't played like the team that they were leading up to the All-Star break, I think this is just a team that's getting into the playoffs and will work from there. And as a Raptors fan, I can say that it worked because Kawhi kind of took his foot off the gas the last 20 games of the regular season. And then as soon as the playoffs started, 42 minutes a night, 31 points per game. So let's just wait and see until the playoffs actually start. We got about another month till we get there, but I'm still scared of this Clippers team. I think outside of Denver, they're still the biggest threat in the West.
Yeah. I'm just going to add one more thing to that. While I get that, like Kawhi will show up, will James Harden also show up in the playoffs? He had a very tough playoffs last season where one night he dropped 40, the next he drops 9 points, and you can't have that for a guy that's in your starting rotation that you expect to be leading this team to championship aspirations. I think Harden can get rid of the narratives around him and his recent playoff performances, but I need to see it to believe it. That's another big question mark I have with this Clippers team come playoff time.
Yeah, the problem with the Clippers is the defense in the post. I can tell you watching the Pelicans play them that Zion has no trouble getting in there and scoring at will. There's other teams that will have that. The Kings have that. The Thunder, a little bit less. So, yeah, maybe you're right about the Thunder. I think the Timberwolves could match up pretty well with them. But I agree. The names are on this team. They're regressing back to the mean of maybe what we thought when this was first coddled together of, is this a great experiment or not? And they did a lot of winning, and now they're slowing down a bit. So maybe you're right. Maybe it's just a little pause before the playoffs. But if I'm a Clippers fan, I'm a little worried here, especially since it looks like it's going to be Clippers-Pelicans one way or the other. In the first round. And that's not a great matchup for them.
I might have to rescind what I said. I was just looking at the Clippers schedule of the last 2 months. So since January 27th, so on January 27th, they beat the Boston Celtics by like 20 points. Okay. Since then, the only team in the entire NBA that is currently like a top 6 seed or better that they've beaten is the Minnesota Timberwolves on March 3rd. That is it. Every single other game against the team that is in the playoffs or like higher, they've lost to, and every other team that they've beat is like 8th seed or lower. So I was just looking at it. The teams that they're beating, they beat the Wizards, they beat the Rockets, they beat the Bulls, the Blazers, the Hawks, but they lost every other game to the Pelicans, the Timberwolves, the Bucks, the Lakers, the Warriors. All these teams are beating them. They haven't actually they've beaten 2 teams that are good in the last 2 months. So now looking at their schedule a little more deeply, I feel a little less confident, but
yeah,
they
also just randomly lost to the Embiid-less Sixers. They let Tobias Harris drop 24 and Cameron Payne drop 23 points on them.
Yeah, I don't want to take it too seriously though, because I do stick by my original point that I don't think that they're going to take the end of the regular season that seriously when there's 10 games left and they just don't want to take any chances. So I will say I still think that once we get to the playoffs, a different gear will turn on. Same with the Lakers. They're the 10th seed of the regular season, but when you get into the playoffs, you don't want to face LeBron and AD. So unless you're the Nuggets, but anyway.
Right. Well, and the Clippers have the Pacers tonight. So if the Pacers aren't tired from scoring 145 and giving up 150 on a back-to-back, this is a game the Clippers have to have. They just have to win it.
Yep.
So, all right, I'm going to bow out of this last one, but contender or pretender, New Orleans Pelicans, starting with you, Zach. BI out for the next 10 to 14 days, just FYI, but supposed to be back at least for the playoffs. Contender, pretender, New Orleans Pelicans.
I mean, hey, him being back for the playoffs is only going to help their chances. I mean, Brandon Ingram's obviously been a net positive for the Pelicans. I don't think that's really hard to dispute. I think they're sneaky contenders. They're not full-on contenders. It's a very tough West this year. It's not like I can just be like, yeah, the Pelicans are going to be able to make like a lot of noise. Like right now, first round matchup is the Clippers. And while we joke about the Clippers, this is still a very tough team to get through. Second round matchup would be the Thunder if they make it. And while they're young, they play a really good style of basketball. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's having a phenomenal season. Chet Holmgren's having a phenomenal season. Those who are leading the way for them, and they're doing a phenomenal job. It's just a very tough road for this Pelicans team. And while they do have talent, if you go into the playoffs without Ingram as well, which I don't think they will, I think they're going to have Ingram back by then. But going into that into the playoffs with a not so warmed up Ingram is definitely going to not be the best for your playoff ambitions as well. While I think they have a really good core, the New Orleans Pelicans, I'm not going to say that they're true contenders just yet.
All right, Jesse?
I'm biased because I just love all of the role players on this team so much, but I actually think that they are contenders because of their role players. I think that this team has more depth than most of the teams in the Western Conference. And I know that the playoffs, you usually run a pretty shallow lineup and depth isn't always the end all be all. But I will say the Pelicans are a team that if they were healthy would absolutely be a contender. But because of their depth, it allows them to still be a pretty contending level team when some of those guys go down. As long as only one of them goes down at a time, I think that they can manage. And honestly, between Ingram and Zion, I think Ingram is more replaceable than Zion for sure, because they have guys who can score on the wing. They have great shooters. Trey Murphy, Herb Jones are both good spot-up shooters, not to mention CJ McCollum and all the other guys on the team. But I think that Zion brings the post game that they desperately need because JV can't handle that all himself, and he really works it inside. But yeah, this team is deep, man. I mean, they have, like I mentioned, Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, Jose Alvarado, Dyson Daniels, Jordan Hawkins, Larry Nance. Like, these are all guys coming off the bench who are quality starters. Najee Marshall. I mean, these guys could all get minutes in a playoff game, and you're not thinking twice about it. So I think that they're very deep. I'm interested to see who they draw in the first round. If it is the Clippers, that's going to be a great series, and I would love to see who comes out on top of that. But it depends how things kind of shake out. If they get the Kings, I would take them over the Kings. If they get the Suns, I think that they could give the Suns a run for their money, just like they did 2 years ago. So I think that could be a fun series, depending if the Suns are also all healthy. So I think that this team has a chance to make a small run, especially if Ingram is back. And I think because of their depth, that they should be poised at least to make it out of the first round.
Yeah, look, the Clippers and the Kings would be dream scenarios because they're 3-1 against the Clippers this year, 4-0 against the Kings. But it looks like we're destined, although the Pelicans have a tough schedule. This week alone, they have the Thunder, the Suns, the Celtics, and I'm forgetting the fourth team, like a little gauntlet for sure without Ingram. But so as long as if they stay top 6 and they get into the playoffs without having to play the play-in, that's a small victory. And then if they get matched up with the Clippers, I think that's a huge series for them. The Clippers, not saying they're on their way out, but you're talking about people with a lot of playoff experience. The Pelicans just a little, but they're hungry and they're an up and coming team, kind of like OKC as well. And so I think that's a good one. But tomorrow night against the Thunder, so big game for both sides, really.
Thunder, Bucks, Celtics, Suns,
the Bucks.
Magic. And then the Spurs, Suns, Blazers, Kings, Warriors, Lakers to finish the season. So it gets easier.
Tough next 4 or 5 games though.
It is.
The next 5 games, every team is the 6th seed or better in their conference.
Wow.
The last 5 get easier for them, but that's going to be kind of a make or break 5 games for them. See what they're made of.
Yeah, you'll see me at the Smoothie King Center this week. Okay, you got Thunder tomorrow night and the Bucks on Thursday. So. Awesome. So good. Look, it's always good to get close. March Madness is fun, but then it feeds into the NBA playoffs, and that's when it gets legit. So, all right, let's shoot over to the MLB. There's a question I wanted to ask you both when we were hanging out with a bunch of MLB The Show pros on Saturday, but I didn't want to throw any shade while we were there. Okay, so we had 8 people that could just play the game. All right, they were perfect on a lot of hits. But here's my question to you. Do you think any of the top MLB The Show pros could hit an actual baseball? Ooh. Jesse, starting with you.
I would say yes. Because I think some of the guys are former baseball players who would just like to play the show now. Yeah. However, for the ones that are 18 in their parents' basement playing MLB The Show, I don't know if those skills are necessarily transferable. So I will say some of those guys have incredible reaction times and a great eye for the plate when it's on a screen. I would love to see when it's actually in front of them in real life, but I would think probably not for most of them. But hitting an actual baseball is one of the hardest things any athlete can do, let alone someone who plays video games. So it'd be tough.
Zach, any thoughts?
I think it entirely depends on the velocity of the pitch and what kind of pitch is being thrown. Let's assume your average major league fastball is 85 miles an hour, right? And
I'm talking about if you pitch to them.
If I pitch to them, they're smacking the hell out of it. They're not.
You sure?
Oh yeah.
I think if you said we're going to a batting cage and it's coming out at 65 miles an hour down the middle.
They're hitting that.
Right.
They're hitting that ball. They're hitting that pitch. I think they're hitting a pitch 65 down the middle. I think they're making
a hit, or is it going to be like a dribbler?
Yeah. Let's think about our team going. Okay, yes, Jack would whiff. He would not be able to hit a 65 mile an hour fastball up the middle. Okay, so that's all we're asking of these people. Can they do it?
I think they definitely could. I'm not sure how strong the hit would be, but I think they could make contact and get it into fair territory. So let's just say that.
All right, it's a dumb question. I was just thinking, these guys are so good at this. I wonder in real life, you think about Tom Cruise hitting BP for his softball team in A Few Good Men, and everybody that's ever watched it is like, this man has never played baseball in his life. So I was just wondering, have they played baseball? Could they do it? All right, Zach, I'm giving you 2 choices for the World Series champion, the Dodgers or the field. Who are you taking?
Oof, the Dodgers or the field. I kind of want to take the field, as crazy as that sounds. Not because I'm doubting the Dodgers, more so just because the nature of how baseball is. It feels like it's not always guaranteed to be the best team in the playoffs, in the World Series. you can make an argument for each of the last couple of years, like, oh, the World Series champion may not have been the best team in baseball. Like, you could argue the Rangers weren't the best team in baseball. At least one of those Astros teams weren't the best team in baseball. Like, the Diamondbacks probably weren't the best team in the NL last year. Anything can happen in playoff baseball. It's that chaotic. If baseball didn't have parity, we would have seen Braves Astros 3 times by now in the World Series. Like, that is what should have happened by now. We should have seen Braves Yankees. We should have seen Braves Astros. And that's what should have happened if baseball was just no parity. The best teams are in it. I think, it's a long season. Anything can go wrong. Shohei has a statement he's releasing in an hour from now that we don't know what that could necessarily be either. Like,
He's announcing his
can happen.
picks for the Final Four.
Yeah.
Anything can happen in a long baseball season. And I'm just going to say, just because of that, I'm going to pick the field. I'm going to pick any of the other 31 teams to win it besides the Dodgers, even though the Dodgers are obviously the favorites.
What happens if Shohei just says, tonight, West Virginia plus 860, book it against Caitlin Clark?
Oh,
all right.
Man.
All right, Jesse, any different thoughts? Dodgers or the field?
I don't know enough about baseball to give a valid opinion on that. But I will say a fun fact I just saw on Twitter was that the Lakers at 39 and 32 last year, same time this year, would have been 4th in the Western Conference instead of 9th. So no baseball analysis, but fun fact about the Lakers.
Great. Thanks. Segue to random thoughts with Jesse. All right. Okay, then going back to you, Zach, since you follow a little bit, what's a World Series prediction for you outside of the Dodgers?
So outside of the Dodgers, I'm looking at the top odds on FanDuel right now. So outside the Dodgers, the favorites are the Braves, Astros, Yankees, Rangers, Orioles, and Phillies. I'm only throwing them in there because they're the second highest NL team on this list. And
Yeah,
I look at these teams, right? I look at what we have available. The Yankees, they have a lot going on. They have Juan Soto for a year. If they make a deep run, we could see Juan Soto in a Yankees uniform for the rest of his career. But baseball is unforgiving. I don't think the baseball guys let that happen. I don't think the Rangers are able to repeat, especially if Jordan Montgomery signs elsewhere. And the Astros, while they do have solid talent, this is not – I know they got Josh Hader, but this is still not the strongest Astros team we have seen. So I like the Orioles actually making it out of the AL. So regardless of the favorites, I like the Orioles making it out of the AL. They have some very young talent, but some very young superstars. When Jackson Holiday comes up, I'm really excited to see his debut in the majors. He's going to be a star. Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman, just Grayson Rodriguez, a lot of young talent on this team. And they added a few veterans to help here and there, but I like the Orioles coming out of the AL. And then the NL, I mean, looking at the NL teams and the favorites, it's literally, besides the Dodgers, it's the Braves and the Phillies as the only 2 teams with any sort of relevancy in these odds. And the Braves can't beat the Phillies in the playoff series, so I'm going to go with my Phillies. So I'm going to predict a 1983 World Series rematch with the Orioles and the Phillies. And because of how young the Orioles are, I'm going to go with my Phillies to win the World Series just because of inexperience in the playoffs. Call that bias, but there is actually a little bit of logic behind that pick. Give me Phillies-Orioles 1983 rematch in the World Series.
I'm just surprised that the Blue Jays have the 8th best odds to win the World Series.
That's a little surprising to me as well. Yeah.
But yeah. Go Jays.
Zach, it's crazy how much you just read my mind. I will show you my notes. I don't know if you could see this. Phillies
had O's.
I had it written down. I can't pick the Atlanta anythings to do anything good. The Astros are hard to pick. Then I had Phillies Orioles right there. I even knew what World Series it was. So I applaud you. You're learning how to be a true content creator. You picked it right. Good job.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's see how good you are. Take us through our draft for today.
Yes. Let's do a draft of minor league baseball team names. Minor league baseball with just some of the best team names you've ever seen. I have the first overall pick, and to me, there were 2 names that jumped out at me, but I got to go with the favorite, probably the favorite for the number 1 pick. Give me the Rocket City Trash Pandas. It had to be number one.
Easily.
All right, Jesse, you have the second overall pick.
All right. I have the second overall pick. So, man, there's a lot of great, like, phenomenal team names on this list. But I'm going to go with one that I love some alliteration. Give me the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp. I think that they're just so locked in, and their mascot, if you haven't seen it, is just incredible. So, Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp, second overall, please.
That is great. That's a good one. You're right. There are so many awesome options, and of late, everybody not only rebranded, but then every once in a while they'll like choose a random thing for this year that they'll go with. I'm going to go with one I had never heard of until I took my Road to the Show character up to AAA, and his first game was against the Sugarland Space Cowboys,
good pick.
which are the AAA team of the Houston Astros. So in Sugarland, just right outside of Houston, I think that's an unbelievable name, and I had to go with it. And then my first pick in the second round, as we come back, there's so many good ones, but I'm going to go with one that's been around for a little bit, and it's the Hartford Yard Goats. I don't know how many yard goats there are in Hartford, Connecticut, but it must be some legitimate number if they name the team after that. So give me the Yard Goats.
Very interesting. I was debating between the Trash Pandas and the Space Cowboys, number one. So, Jesse, you kind of surprised me by not taking the Space Cowboys, number two.
I knew you were going to take the Space Cow or the Trash Pandas first. I thought there was a chance Space Cowboys would fall past Brian and I could get it on the way back.
That's crazy. That's crazy thinking to me.
It just clearly didn't happen the way we thought it would. But it's okay because there's a lot of teams that I can choose from. And you know what? I'm going to go with my glorious King LeBron is from Akron. Give me the Akron Rubber Ducks. I think it's such a great name. The AA affiliate of the Cleveland Guardians, the Rubber Ducks, as my second pick.
Awesome. Back to me.
By the way, the least threatening opponent name. Oh, we're going against the Rubber Duckies this week. Great.
Back to me for the next two picks. These are two names that I thought had first round value, and I'm glad that both of them fall to me. First one I'm going to take the classic, the Simpsons reference. Give me the Albuquerque Isotopes. Pretty cool that they took the name from the show and they decided to adopt it as their actual name.
Is that true, or did they have it first?
No,
that's a great question.
They actually adopted it from the Simpsons.
Okay,
I'm pretty sure. I'm like 90%.
I believe you've done the research.
And then secondly, another team name that I just love. Give me the Montgomery Biscuits. I mean, to have your team name be the Biscuits, it's just fantastic.
I thought you were about to take the team that I really wanted with my next pick. So I think that this is just enough said. Give me the single A affiliate of the Mariners, the Modesto Nuts. And their mascot, by the way, is literally just a peanut wearing a hat. And it's like the best thing I've ever seen. So these nuts are my next pick.
I can confirm that the Albuquerque Isotopes were formed in 2003. So the Simpsons had been around like 15 years by that point, which is another stupid stat as well. All right. For my pick in the third round here, I'm going to go with the Amarillo Sod Poodles. I don't know what a sod poodle is, but it's an unbelievable thing to have a poodle involved and it not be a dog. So I'm going to go with that.
Nice.
And then last, I have a few different options here that I don't know really which way to go, but I think I'm going to stay the closest minor league baseball team to New Orleans, the Biloxi Shuckers. And the reason I'm really picking them is I know it's not a kosher name because it's the Shuckers and we're talking about shellfish, but I'm going Biloxi Shuckers because they have a home hat that has BS on it, which is my initials. So I love it. Give me the Shuckers.
Nice. All right. Man, I gotta find a team here to go for my last pick. So
yes, your last pick this time, Jesse. Your last pick.
Yeah.
Yeah, no extras.
Don't worry. Ooh, you know what? They haven't been taken yet. Let me just make sure they haven't been taken yet so I don't look like an idiot. All right, you know what? with my final pick, give me the Richmond Flying Squirrels. I love it. Love the idea. I would hope that at the ballpark they have a flying squirrel, going around pregame. If they don't, under their new management, they will. They have Atlanta games. They have Beat the Freeze. This is going to be Beat the Flying Squirrel. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and we're going to get that started ASAP. So give me the Richmond Flying Squirrels.
That is awesome. Okay, with the final pick, I'm glad that this team fell to me. This is a team that I found out about for the first time while researching this. Give me the Quad Cities River Bandits. Love the name.
What are the four cities? What are the four cities?
I don't know. I believe they're a Royals affiliate. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the Quad Cities are. All that matters is that they're the Quad Cities River Bandits. And that is just such a cool name. They have like a raccoon with like a cowboy hat and like a bandana as the mascot. It's sick. It looks awesome. Love getting the River Bandits here in the 4th round.
I will just say one thing about this draft. This draft has made me realize how uncreative the NFL has been with the whole Commanders thing. There are so many amazing names out there that you could adopt. And you really went with the football team and then the Commanders. You've got the Cannonballers. You've got like the Tourists, the Asheville Tourists. Come on, that's a great name.
I mean
that is. And Russell Wilson once played for the Asheville Tourists, by the way.
Yeah, I mean there's so many names that like weren't picked in this that I would have considered. There's the Rome Emperors. There's the Corpus Christi Hooks. The Toledo Mud Hens.
I have a great one that I thought Jesse was going to pick. He took the Modesto Nuts. I thought he was going to come back with the Lansing Lug Nuts.
Yeah,
I was thinking about putting them together, and I was also thinking about the Fort Myers Mighty Mussels. I think that one's great too. You've got the Colonels out of Cedar Rapids. There's endless possibilities there.
By the way, the Quad City River Bandits. The Quad Cities they're located in Davenport, Iowa. I don't know what other 3 large towns are around Davenport, Iowa, but those are the Quad Cities. And I want to just mark that Zach bookended his 2 teams, his draft, with 2 references to raccoons.
Yes, big raccoon draft. But let us know who had the best draft in the comments below.
Great stuff. That was fun. That was I think the best name out of all of these the Trash Pandas is just legendary. But
for me, the 4 names I really liked. I got the first 3 that I drafted were 3 of the 4 that I really liked, but also the Sugarland Space Cowboys.
I just think the Modesto Nuts, they're just such a great unit.
So random. I love it.
Oh, I'm going to the Nuts game. You want to come? It's hilarious. So
hey man, you want to come with me and see the Shuckers?
Now, what they don't have here is I think it's either like minor league or something, but in Toronto they actually have the Toronto Maple Leafs play, and it's a baseball team, and it's like the stupidest thing, but they play at a park near my house, and it's like the Maple Leafs baseball. It's weird, but it's a thing.
Yeah. RIP to the New Orleans Baby Cakes, who used to be our AAA team here that left. So too bad. All right, guys. That was a good one. And look, we'll be back on Thursday for a little our regular episode of PTR on Thursday. Lots of trivia, lots of games like this. Maybe we get involved with going deeper in single A teams only or something. I don't know. But and don't forget to check out our second chance bracket. You can check it out in our link tree. You can see it in our Discord, whatever. Now's the time for redemption. If your first bracket is in the toilet, let's bring it back out. Let's get a second chance and make it happen. Right, Zach?
Absolutely correct.
Awesome. All right. We'll see you guys Thursday. Have a good one.